Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out yet another Jurassic World Dominion release. This is our third version of the Pyroraptors so far, so we're starting to create quite the flock of Pyroraptors, but this time we have the extreme damage version, and again I want to give a huge shout out to Tim from Collect Jurassic, who was super cool enough to hook me up with this figure, rather than waiting for it to potentially show up here in the United States, because we know how sometimes we just don't get stuff, so I really wanted to get a hold of this one, as well as the Quilmosaurus that I've recently reviewed as well, and he was awesome enough to again help me get a hold of these. So, as you can see, when it comes to the packaging, it's your standard, especially when it comes to that, extreme damage type packaging. And then here on the back, you can see another image of the Pyroraptor, as well as an image down here showing off the extreme damage Velociraptor, as well as the Quilmosaurus, which we've recently reviewed. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the packaging, and jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Pyroraptor, one thing that's really interesting to take note of about this version is the sculpt is the same primarily to what we had seen on the previous two versions of the Pyroraptor, with some adjustments, of course, like the button for the extreme damage as well as the extreme damage itself. However, there's one other area on this figure that's been updated that I think is a massive improvement over the previous few. And just looking here at the head sculpt, and if you've watched my previous reviews of the Pyroraptor figures, you might remember one of my big complaints about the figure was the teeth and how big and bulky they were. Well, on this newest version, you could see the teeth are a lot smaller, a lot more reasonable looking, and a lot better looking. They aren't quite as big and bulky as the previous versions were, so that's super exciting if you ask me. Definitely making this one my favorite version of the Pyroraptor, because in general I feel like the sculpt just looks a lot better here in the face without those massive ugly teeth that it had on the previous versions. A much better version. If they only had updated the arms to have longer feathers, it really would have been the best version, but either way I would still say it's the best version. Now, of course, being that we have reviewed the sculpt before, that means everything is pretty much the same throughout as far as like the fine detail and everything. You're not really going to find too much difference here, besides again the extreme damage, the paintwork, and the improvement of the teeth. But as far as what is new, again, mostly would be the coloration, and you can see on this one, rather than a black, we have like a really nice gray for the face, which I also think looks better than the black, so I think I'm a bigger fan of the paint job of this one than I am of the previous few. I just think the gray looks a lot closer to what the Pyroraptor looks like in Jurassic World Dominion, so that, is definitely a really nice look for the figure. You can see we have a yellow eye with a slit-like pupil. The pupil looks like it might be the same gray, but it also looks like it could potentially be a black. Yeah, I'm thinking it is a black, actually. So it looks like we do have a black pupil for the Pyroraptor, and again, just the gray for the face. Nothing else is different color-wise or anything right there. You can see the teeth are painted with a kind of a yellow, like a light yellow, so it adds a nice dose of realism, I think, as far as the coloration of the teeth goes. You can see that we have the tongue painted with a pink. There's also a pretty dark pink for the back of the throat right there, and you can definitely make out the fact that we have a really nice gloss coat on the inside of the mouth of the Pyroraptor. As we lead back up here to the top of the head, you have like some maroon coloration leading off of the head of those feathers, and again, as you lead out into those feathers, you can see underneath we go back to that kind of reddish tone for the figure. So there is a slight difference in color, well, not even a slight, a pretty good difference of color between those feathers leading off of the back of the head and the feathering of the rest of the body. As we continue to move down the course of the figure, you can see that we basically have that red running through the majority of the figure. You have a little bit of that gray leading down into the throat, but that tapers off pretty quickly, and then you have that gray picking back up here again in the stomach region before disappearing here in the thigh, but then we have the gray coming back here from the tail and then leading through the thigh down into the legs, and once it comes down into the legs, it kind of overtakes the legs entirely, so we don't have any actual nail paint on the figure, but it kind of looks like we do because the legs are like a grayish tone. We do sort of have a glossy look, it looks like, for the nails, so there is a little bit of a gloss coat on the nails, making them shine a bit more realistically. And one thing that I really love about this one over the previously released versions is how smooth the transition is here for this gray leading down. On the very first Pyroraptor we had received, which was the Kayla set version, it was such an abrupt transition between the reddish tone and the, on that one I think it was a black, whereas this one looks a lot smoother, a lot more natural, and a little bit more realistic, I would say. And then as you lead back up here, you can see again the red leading down before transitioning completely to the gray out here on the tail. And then the underside as well has that gray for the tail. You can see the gray kind of leaking down here as well. So what's really cool about this one, straight away you can see we have paintwork difference from head to tail. So, you know, it looks like a fully painted figure rather than a half painted figure, which is what we do often get from the Mattel line. But really nice paintwork on this one. Just like with the Quilmosaurus, I think the only thing that it really needed would have been painted nails, and it honestly would have been fantastic, which I really still think it actually is fantastic, but it just would have been a little bit better. There is the Jurassic Facts code if you would like to add this to your collection. And then of course we have the extreme damage feature, which if you actually look in there, even though the gray comes up over the body, you can see we actually have like the reddish tone in there rather than the gray. But once you push the button, if I could find the button, there you go, you can kind of make out the fact that we again have that like blood and guts look in there as the dinosaur has been injured. Probably is a little easier seen over here. Yeah, you can definitely see it a little bit better. Really nice looking sculpt and detail in there. Nice glossy red look for the injury on the Pyroraptor. I really do quite love the fact that they have that action feature. I think the extreme damage feature is really cool, really fun, and looks pretty nice, and it also always works really well. But really beautiful Pyroraptor, definitely my favorite Mattel version so far. Now, as far as articulation goes, you can see we have the articulated jaw, which is incredibly smooth. We also have the articulation in the neck, which can completely swivel if you would like it to, but it can also go up, can also go down. Exactly the same articulation we had for the Quilmosaurus. You also have articulation in the arms, forward and back, and out away from the body. Man, that's smooth. That is crazy, crazy smooth. And then you also have the articulation in the legs, again, forward and back. It doesn't go out away from the body or anything, but this type of figure it usually doesn't. And then you have the swivel tail on top of everything. So quite a bit of articulation for your Pyroraptor. As far as a size goes, it's not too big. You're looking at about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. And then for a height, I would say actually the tail might be the highest point in this position. You're looking at just shy of 2 3/4 inches or 7 centimeters. And then for the head, about, I'd say 2 1/4 inches, maybe a little over, or about 6 centimeters, closing in on that area. It is kind of crouched a little bit. I'm sure we could position it up a little bit higher. Yeah, so that's probably more natural as far as the positioning of the Pyroraptor goes. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, showing you the fact that this Pyroraptor is right there in the same size range as all of the previously released Pyroraptors, right there in that Attack Pack size range. But to show you that a little bit better, here are the other recent Pyroraptor releases from Mattel outside of the 12-inch basic version. And you could definitely see, again, they are all the same figure primarily as far as the sculpt goes, but the one thing you can definitely see is different, again, would be the teeth. Look how much bigger and bulkier the teeth are on this one, which was the older one, compared to the newer one. The extreme damage version has much nicer teeth. And again, that transition is so abrupt on that leg, but it's so smooth on this one. So all the same size, just with some minor adjustments, minor differences. But in my opinion, the newest extreme damage version definitely is the best version to come so far from Mattel as far as these Pyroraptors go. So this brand new extreme damage version of the Pyroraptor is an absolutely beautiful looking figure. Much better than the older ones, if you ask me. And the older ones aren't even that old, they were just released. But again, this is the newest one to hit my collection, and definitely an improvement over the previous releases, just alone on the teeth, because the teeth are so much better looking on this newer one, quite ugly and bulky on the older one, kind of like the version 2 of the Monolophosaurus that Mattel had released, where the first ones had really nice teeth, and then they released the second versions, and the top teeth were so huge and ugly, similar to what we had here, but in opposite releases, because the original ones had ugly teeth, and now the newest one has really nice looking teeth. I also, of course, love the sculpt. Mattel did a great job on the sculpt. Really nice detail throughout, beautiful scale detail where there would be scale detail, beautiful feather detail where there would be feather detail. And we haven't had too many feathered dinosaurs from Mattel, so that's exciting in general to have a feathered dinosaur, and now 3 of them with these Pyroraptors. It's cool to have so many different versions of them already. And I'm also a bigger fan, I think, of the paint job of this one over the previous ones, because I just feel like it looks a lot more natural and a lot more, closer to what we see in Dominion as far as the Pyroraptor goes. I feel like the coloration of this one is pretty spot on to what we see when it comes to a toy form version of the Pyroraptor in Dominion. You know, not perfect, but I mean, I guess it's not exactly spot on, but it's pretty darn close. And the tones of color and everything they've used look really good. And it's nice to see, again, paint from head to tail on these figures. It really does make a world of difference when it comes to the appeal factor of one of the Mattel releases when you have coloration that runs from the head all the way out onto the tail. Of course, painted nails would have been an improvement on each and every Pyroraptor release, as well as many other Mattel figures, but it still looks really nice. You have some really smooth articulation, and on this one, for some reason, it is super smooth, as well as a really cool action feature with the extreme damage feature. So as a whole, this is definitely the best version of the Pyroraptor to come from Mattel so far, if you ask me. Still not perfect, but definitely much better. So if you are interested in this, so far this one has not landed here in the United States anywhere that I am aware of, unfortunately. So it's a little tricky to get a hold of. My good buddy Tim had imported some and he was able to hook me up with them. So my suggestion is maybe check eBay, or you can just wait it out and hopefully they will arrive here at some point in the United States. Regardless, definitely worth picking up if you can find it, so make sure you do that if you do see it, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.